The Magic Faraway Tree by Enid Blyton. Chapter 7. Mr. Changeabout and the Enchanter. Everyone stared at Mr. Changeabout. At least, as he was the only person in the room, they thought that was who it must be. He got up and came towards them. He was a fat, comfortable-looking person with a broad smile on his face.
What a lot of visitors, he said. Do sit down.
There was nowhere to sit except on the stone floor, which looked rather cold, so nobody sat down. Something happened to Mr. Changeabout when nobody obeyed him. He grew tall and thin. His broad smile disappeared and a frown came all over his face. He looked like a very unpleasant person.
Sit down, he roared,
and everybody sat down in a hurry. Mr. Changeabout looked at the saucepan man, who had sat down with a tremendous clatter.
Have you got a nice little kettle that would boil enough water to make 2 mugs of hot chocolate?
He asked, in quite a pleasant voice this time. The saucepan man didn't hear, so Joe shouted in his ear, and he beamed, got up and undid a little kettle that he had on him.
Just the thing, he said, handing it to Mr. Changeabout. Try it and see.
Mr. Changeabout changed again. His voice had changed before, but this time his face changed too, and he became a happy-looking man with dancing eyes and a sweet smile. He took the kettle.
Oh, thank you, he said. So kind of you. I just wanted one of these, and it is just what I wanted. Now, how much is it? Oh, no, nothing at all, said the saucepan man. A present for you. Well, allow me to hand round some hot chocolate to you all in return for such a nice present, said Mr. Changeabout, and he fetched an enormous box of chocolates from the cupboard. Everyone was pleased. Rick looked carefully into the box when his turn came. His hand stretched out for the very biggest chocolate of all. Mr. Changeabout at once changed again and flew into a rage. He became thin and mean-looking. His nose shot out long and his eyes became very small. Bad boy! Greedy boy! He shouted. You shan't have any of my chocolates now! Horrible, greedy children! And at once all the chocolates changed into little hard stones. Beth had hers in her mouth, and she spat it out at once. The others looked disgusted. The old saucepan man gave a yell. I've swallowed mine, and now I suppose I've got a stone inside me. Oh, you nasty Mr. Changeabout. I'll show you what I think of your chocolates. And to everyone's surprise, Saucepan rushed at Mr. Changeabout, knocked his box of chocolates all over the room, and began to shake him hard. Rattle, rattle, shake, shake. Gosh, how the saucepan man shook Mr. Changeabout. And Mr. Changeabout tried to shake the saucepan back. But what was the good of that? Saucepan was so covered in pots and pans that nobody could possibly shake him about without hurting themselves. Clang, clatter, bang, clatter, crash. The kettles and saucepans made an enormous noise, and everyone began to laugh, because really Saucepan looked too funny for words, dancing about on the floor, pushing and shaking Mr. Changeabout. Mr. Changeabout suddenly got very big and fierce-looking. But old Saucepan didn't seem to mind at all. He just went on shaking and pushing at him and shouting, the bigger you are, the more there is to punish. So then Mr. Changeabout got very, very small as a mouse, and ran squealing across the floor in fright. Quick as lightning, Saucepan picked him up and popped him into a kettle and put the lid on. Oh, Saucepan, whatever will you do next?" asked Joe, wiping tears of laughter from his eyes. I've never seen such a funny sight in my life. Be careful Mr. Changeabout doesn't squeeze out of that spout. "Oh, no, I'll stuff it with paper," said Saucepan, tearing some off the box of chocolates. "Now he's secure. Right, well, what do we do next?" "Well, we'd better get out of here," said Joe, standing up. He turned towards the doorway. But what was this? Oh, no. There was no doorway and no door. Only a wall of rock that ran all the way around the underground room. "Oh, no. How do we get out?" asked Joe, puzzled. "Oh, this is a very magic place indeed." "Well, there's no window, of course, because we're underground," said Rick. What are we going to do?" "Well, what about the chimney?" asked Franny, running to the fire. "It looks pretty big, but perhaps we could get out up there. If we put the fire out, we could maybe climb up." "Well, that looks like our only chance of getting out of here," said Joe. He looked around for some water to put out the fire. He saw a water pump by the wall and went to it. He put a bucket underneath and pumped the handle up and down. The water was bright green and soon filled the bucket. Joe threw it on the fire. It made a terrific sizzling noise and went out at once, puffing clouds of green smoke into the room. Joe stepped onto the dead fire and looked up the chimney. "Oh, look, there's an iron ladder going right up," he called in excitement. "Come on, we'll get dirty, but we can't help that. Hurry, before any more mysterious things happen." He went up the ladder. It was very hot from the heat of the fire, but grew cooler and colder the higher he went. "What a long chimney!" called back Joe. "Is everyone coming?" "Yes, yes," called 6 voices down below. Joe climbed steadily upwards. At last the ladder came to an end. Joe clambered over the top of it and found himself in a creepy place. "Well, this looks like some kind of cellar," he said to the others as they scrambled up beside him. "Look at all those sacks piled up. What do you think's inside them?" "Well, let's look," said Rick, who was always curious about everything. He undid a sack and, good heavens, out poured a stream of bright gold pieces. Everyone looked at it in amazement. "Well, somebody very rich must live here," said Joe at last. "I've never seen so much gold. I can't believe that all the sacks are full of it." He undid another sack and out poured gold again. And just as everyone was running their fingers through it and marvelling at the gleam and shine of so much gold, they heard quick footsteps overhead. A door above them opened and a gleam of sunlight shone out onto a flight of stone steps leading up from the cellar to the door. A tall man in a pointed hat looked down. "Gosh! It's an enchanter," whispered Moonface in a fright. "We must still be in the land of spells. Oh dear! Robbers! Thieves! Burglars!" shouted the enchanter in a loud voice. "Guards, come here! Capture these robbers! They are after my gold! See, they have undone 2 sacks already!" We don't want your gold," cried Rick. "We only wanted to know what it was and what was in all these sacks." "I don't believe you," cried the enchanter, as about a dozen small elves came running past him down the steps to the cellar. "Capture them, guards, and lock them up." The little elves pulled everyone up the cellar steps into a big sunlit room. Its ceiling was so high that nobody could even see it. "Now, lock them up!" commanded the enchanter. Moonface suddenly snatched a kettle from saucepan and snapped the string that tied it to him. It went towards the enchanter, with Moonface holding it fearlessly. "Wait!" he cried, much to the surprise of the others. "Wait! Before you do this foolish thing, I am an enchanter too, and in this kettle I have Mr. Changeabout. Yes, he's a prisoner there, and let me tell you this, that if you dare to lock me up, I'll put you into this kettle too, with Mr. Changeabout." From the kettle came a small, squealing voice. "Set me free, enchanter! Set me free! Oh, do set me free!" The enchanter turned quite pale. He knew it was Mr. Changeabout's voice. It was the voice he had when he became very small. Oh, this is most peculiar," he said. "How did you capture Mr. Changeabout? He is a very powerful person and a great friend of mine." "Oh, I'm not going to tell you what magic I use," said Moonface boldly. "Now, are you going to let us go, or shall I put you in this kettle too?" Well, I'll let you go," said the enchanter, and he waved them all towards the door at the end of the room. "You may leave at once." Everyone rushed to the door gladly. They all ran through it, expecting to come out into the sunshine. But they didn't. The enchanter had played a trick on them. They found themselves going up many hundreds of stairs, up and up and up, and when they came to the top, there was nothing but a round room with one small window. A bench stood at one end and a table at the other. The enchanter's voice floated up to them. "Ho! I've got you nicely now. Now I'm going to get my friend, Wizard Wily, and he'll soon tell me how to deal with robbers like you." "Oh, we are in a trap," groaned Joe. "Moonface, you were very clever and very brave, but honestly, we're worse off than ever before. I simply don't see any way out of this at all." And that is the end of that chapter. Oh dear, they really have got themselves into a bit of a pickle, haven't they? So where are they now? Where have they found themselves? They've still managed to potentially trap themselves in the land of spells, and it now appears that they're trapped even further in a remote room in the house of the enchanter. And who on earth is Wizard Wily going to be? Will he be a nice wizard? Do we think? What do you think he might do? If you could give some advice to the children now and to their friends, what would you tell them to do? What do you think they should do to get themselves out of this pickle? Or find out what they decide to do tomorrow.